using two screens. So if you guys can just let me know that you can see my PowerPoint presentation. Give me a thumbs up. Okay, awesome. And so a lot of you probably have never met me before because I come from the BrightView commercial and industrial side. I've only just taken on the HOA portion because our beloved Julie trailer has left us for bigger and better things. So I am here filling her very large shoes, and you're going to start to see me at CAI events. We miss her dearly, but I'm excited to meet and work with all of you. But enough about me. Let's talk about drought stuff. So I am going to fly through this because for whatever reason, even after COVID, being on Zoom makes me incredibly nervous. So bear with me. My voice will probably waver a little bit and I'll talk with my hands a lot. But let's talk about the drought. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions. Just shout out anything you want to know more about. Drought resistant landscaping basics. It all comes down to the very first thing you want to start with, right? Is choosing your plants wisely. When you're designing a drought tolerant space, be it your front yard, be it a parkscape, the most crucial design is selecting plants that can endure our blistering summers, right? They need to require little water for at least half the year, if not more, once they're planted. This allows the plants to thrive, and it's going to save you a fortune on water bills, which we know is a bill that just keeps going up and up. You also need to consider the work. And I think this is a place where when we're thinking about a xeriscape or a drought tolerant landscape, we forget about what goes into these because we think, oh, it's not very much water, so it's very low maintenance. And that's not always the truth. There are a lot of extremely drought tolerant plants. For example, this pampas grass down here at the bottom, once it's established, hardly needs any water at all, but it will turn into a massive jungle. So you really have to consider, am I going to make this a labor of love and be in my garden every single day? Or do I just want to, hang out there with a bottle of wine and maybe maintain my grass every, or my garden every, once a month, once every couple weeks? Things to think of. It's also very important that when you're searching for those drought tolerant plants that you think about California grown plants. Drought tolerant is something that is talked about in many different zones, but Arizona drought tolerant is so different than California drought tolerant. And it sounds silly to say that out loud, but really it's something that I encounter quite a bit when I'm working with people who are transferring landscape from a lush turf to a drought or xeriscape. You have to look at Mediterranean or California grown plants. It'll make or break your yard. The amount of maintenance needed is not a determining factor for your landscape. You have to consider picking those native plants. You need things that are going to cope well with our soil and surviving on the little water. But you also want to think about what's going to attract the organisms that are native to our area. For example, species like lavender, lilies, they're both very popular, very drought tolerant, and they welcome things like hummingbirds, bees, all sorts of different insect and animal that help plants to pollinate and grow more flowers throughout the garden. It's also really easy to overlook drought resistant grasses and plants when planning a watering schedule. But they often require a ton of water in their first year to get established. And people don't necessarily think about this. They think drought tolerant, cool, I'm going to throw it in the ground, never going to think about it again. That's not always true. So make sure you're doing your research and you're not getting stuck with something that's just going to cause major issues with your water bill. Plan it out, plan it properly. After those plants have adapted to their surroundings, watering becomes much less critical, and in some cases may not even be necessary, depending on what you go with. All right, so you picked your plants. Now we need to prepare for our drought tolerant garden. Creating a drought tolerant landscape is a multi-step process. It can be a bear, so don't get discouraged. It can be time consuming. There's a lot of different steps. But if you take some care and you plan it out properly, you're going to have a beautiful space. The first thing, again, you're going to pick your ground cover, your plants. And then it's so important, and people skip this step all the time, but you really want to make sure that you're laying out the proper style of compost and mulch in your garden that's going to regenerate and protect that natural soil. We really want to embrace that and help it to be successful. You also have to manage your irrigation system. We don't want to see pop-ups like this out there in a drought tolerant space. We want to see a drip line. And in California, with all of our water restrictions, it's so important that we are thinking about capturing rainwater if possible, and that we're turning that into a source of nourishment for our garden. Okay, so with all of these little tips in mind, you also want to think about hydrozoning. Hydrozoning may be a phrase that you're not necessarily familiar with, but it refers to planting groups of species together in specific regions in your garden based on their watering needs. You don't want to put a citrus tree next to some rosemary. Rosemary hates water. Citrus trees need all the water that you'll give them. It would be the same as putting a succulent down at the bottom of your citrus tree. They don't want water. So you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So again, going back to that planning is just so important, and understanding the needs of each individual plant life. Another thing to think about is hardscaping. Plant life, a lot of drought tolerant plant life does very well when it's surrounded by rock and stone, pavers, creating that desert oasis that you'll never want to leave. Think about the hardscapes and the elements that they can add to your landscaping. All right, so again, back to that, designing your drought tolerant landscaping. Once you've figured out which plants you'd like to use, you want to make sure that you're taking those steps to implement your drought tolerant landscaping, where you're putting the plants, where you're putting your hardscapes, your pavers, your DG. Don't forget your furniture and what decorations you're going to be using to fill the space. You want to make sure that you're taking into account what kind of plant life. Again, when in doubt during your plant search, look for the signature characteristics of a Mediterranean climate plant. That's going to be something with thick foliage, something with trichomes, which are the little teeny tiny hairs that you find on the leaves, and something that secretes oil. Those oils actually trap in the moisture that's in the air and the rain. In addition, you want to consider your yard or your space's sun patterns. You want to make sure that you are taking into consideration the native species in your area and setting yourself up for that gardening success. Each region in our state has very, very unique characteristics, right? Preaching to the choir, you all know this, whether it's the coast or the deserts or the redwood forest, species are going to do particularly well in their own little micro zone. So research, research, research is the name of the game today. The best plant life in our area, we love our California fuchsias. You see a ton of deer grass all over the place. I put a green deer grass and a more brown to green deer grass here. We love our seaside daisies. We love western red buds. They can be this deep purple to a very, very light pink. Not listed here, but also big are lilies. We see all types of lilies, lavenders. There's so many different types of plant life that's drought resistant. The possibilities truly are endless. There's vibrant colors, there's green grasses. It's important. It can be a fun project, but really you just want to make sure that you are taking the time and doing the research, really fleshing out what you want to see back there, how much it's going to be xeriscaped, how much hardscape, whether you're doing green grasses or bright, vibrant colors, drought tolerant landscaping. There's a lot of possibilities. And that's it. I told you I was going to speed through this. So again, my name is Laura. Reach out to me if you have questions. If you are looking for a full overhaul or design, we have a great design team. If you just have questions about plant life, I'm around and happy to give you some advice.
Does anyone have any questions for Laura? You know how when we talk to attorneys and we're like, no specific questions? Now is not that time. Right? If you have a specific HOA related question to this, you can ask it.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you, Kay.
Okay. So question on deer grass.
Yes.
How often or should it ever be trimmed?
So how often? That is an excellent question. I know in my own yard, I do it twice a year. Specifically though, you want to do it in the late spring. I'm not sure if it's necessary. I'll have to check with my horticulture expert if it's necessary to trim it in the fall. I do it because aesthetically it gets so out of control, right? It's one of those fast growing jungle plants. But with deer grass, it's very similar to like a no-mow fescue. You want to make sure that you are taking it back very, very low. I think we see a lot of deer grass that just kind of topped off. That to prolong the life of that plant, you want to prune it back really low, at least a couple of times a year. And Kay, I will find out the exact specifics and follow up with you.
Okay, and how low are you talking about low?
I'm talking about like 2 inches to the ground.
Okay.
It's not very pretty for a couple of weeks, and then it comes right back.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Someone else in the chat would also like to know if we could get a copy of your handout of the slides.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There is an error on one of the slides that says Southern California. I apologize. I'll fix that before I send it out.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if you just want to, either you can send it to the list or you can send the PDF to me and I'll send it out to everybody.
Okay,
Your call.
sure.
Thank you.
So this means you
I was
have
going
stuff
to
for
ask,
Southern
Oh, go
California
ahead.
as well.
I'm sorry, say that again.
So this means you have stuff for Southern California as well.
Yeah, I have stuff for all of California. Sign you up.
Please.
Brenda.
Yeah, do you guys do like a little like newsletter or something weekly?
Yeah, we have all kinds of stuff.
Suzette, I didn't mean to step on you when you were trying to talk. My apologies.
oh, no worries at all. Mine was more of a kind of a, I don't know, philosophical thing. I love, like I commented, I love the pathways you showed with like the drought resistant plants, more like just very beautiful, right? The problem I see especially in one of our communities, is a large community. It's spread over like 45 acres. And we had a landscaper who was very much into the native, let's go native. And all the homeowners complained about was the weeds, because the homeowner wants to see grass and they want to see shrubs that are pruned and they want to look like they see on when they watch their TV shows. That's the landscaping they want. And
Right.
I'm finding it's really hard to kind of, either you have to stay more with the green, the traditional type landscaping, or you have to find a happy medium of how to introduce those more drought tolerant and like, especially when you're dealing with a large area, right? Not just a small community, but something that's really drawn out. And then trying to convince homeowners, just be patient. It will look pretty at some point. So I do have suggestions. Have you worked with communities that we're dealing with trying to transition from the more traditional landscape that's green and lush and all of that to the more native style?
Yes, and it's a beast, right? To help the homeowners or the community members to understand that, yes, this is how it's supposed to look. I find that constant communication is really the only way to do it. We have some prefabricated like newsletter style little blurbs that you can send out to your homeowners that talks about the why and what the end result will look like. Some of the larger communities will do like a landscape panel too at their HOA meetings, where you have maybe your account manager and some of the crew members or a business developer come in and field the questions and assure your homeowners that, this is how it's supposed to look. This is the cycle of the plant life. This is what the end result's going to be. But really it's the communication. We maintain the city of Davis. And they're like very natural scape, all native, don't touch anything, let it grow naturally. And there are the people that really, really appreciate it. And there are the people that call and complain and tell us that we're not doing our job and they're wasting their money. And it just comes back to that communication and education. And it's a process.
But you're never going to satisfy everybody 100% of the time.
No, that's very true.
Laura, there was another question in the chat from Nico. Does BrightView have any partnerships with water companies to provide any rebates when switching to drought tolerant landscaping?
So excellent question. I won't go as far as say partnerships, but with your dedicated account manager, when you're making the move over to drought tolerant, we work with you to find all the rebates and all the cost saving programs in your area. And they do trainings and classes on this so that they know what's coming up in their different areas that they cover.
Sorry, Sammy has his hand up first, or he had it up. Sorry, Brad, 1 second.
Hi,
missed
this is Sammy Miller.
Oh, her, sorry.
That's
Hi,
okay.
Sammy.
So this is all really great information. And you know, I've been doing some research, but does BrightView offer like help drafting a drought tolerant like landscape, not necessarily the policy, but just giving the board options that they can look at and include in a policy? Just to kind of help give them an idea, because I'm overwhelmed with it and my boards are overwhelmed with it. So having something from a professional as a guideline would be really helpful. Is that something BrightView could help managers with?
Definitely. We
Okay.
can offer a variety of different things, from like a plant palette to renderings, to we call it a client partnership plan, where we would basically like spell out the scope of work and what it's going to take to get from point A to point B, all the different moving parts that go into that.
Yeah, that would be great, because the one in particular that the homeowners are actually responsible for their own landscaping, and it's quite a task to like keep everybody on track. And a lot of them have dead or dying grass, and their excuse has always been the drought, which is fine. We've given them some leeway on that, but we're getting to a point now where it's dirt lawns. And so the board doesn't have anything in their governing documents that give a procedure or options for drought tolerant, right? Because obviously it's not just about picking the right plants. It's about, okay, how do you install them properly to actually keep them drought friendly? And so I just wanted to make sure that we have you guys on that property. So it would be great to kind of work with you guys and get some guidance on it, because there's so many options out there. It's overwhelming. And
a good thing to do would probably be come up with a very generalized plant palette and just some how-to step by step. I mean, it doesn't have to be over the top. And of course, the homeowners could stray from that palette, but just giving them that like guiding hand, right? Here's 25 things that you can put in your yard, and you want to group these 5 together and these 5 together. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
absolutely. That would be great.
I'll reach out to you. Let's talk a little more offline about what specific community it is, and we'll pull your account manager in.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this. This is why we started these. Any other questions? Those were great questions. Did you say it was Rosemary that didn't like water?
Oh my gosh, Rosemary hates water.
Did not know that.
Sprinkle it twice a week. Treat it like a succulent. I have killed more rosemary in my garden than you would ever guess.
Yeah, that's probably why mine's dying all the time.
Yeah. I was on a property walk with an account manager not too long ago, and he was telling me about all these challenges because they had rosemary next to roses, and it looked so beautiful. And he's like, oh, I can't wait to rip all this out. That rosemary is such a nightmare. And I learned, and now my rosemary looks beautiful.
Good to know.
Rosemary really seems to attract the bees as well. My neighbor has like his entire front yard is nothing but rosemary.
Oh, yeah.
My dog will go over there because you know how much dogs love to eat bees because it gives them like a high or something. And she just like trounces, and there's tons of bees in his rosemary all the time.
Oh, funny. Yeah, it definitely will bring in the pollinators for sure. Will your dog get stung? Get a little puffy, cute dog face?
Yeah, she doesn't really swell up too much, but you know, she like yips when she gets stung and then goes right back in for more. I'm like, what are you doing? She's got a big head to begin with, so you can't really see the swelling much.
Almost there. Thank you all for joining us today. If you have
Thank
any questions for Laura, feel free to reach out to her, reach out to us. We'll connect you.
Thank you, Laura.
Look for that
Bye.
Starbucks card.
You.
Aw.
Thank you. Thanks so much.